I'm getting increasingly worried with my relationship with coffee. I've gone from having 1 cup a week on Sundays when I need to wake up really early for the tutoring center to around 3 or 4. And I understand that caffeine is a necessity for a lot of modern day living, right? But I'm always worried about floors and ceilings. Let me explain. When you enjoy something, when you enjoy anything, it pulls you up from a state of sort of middling normalcy, a floor, if you will. It's meant to increase your sort of mind state, your self, above a baseline, which you usually exist in. And for people who are happy a lot of the time, their baseline might be higher, and they might need more things to be even happier. Or perhaps if your baseline is lower, say if you have anxiety or depression or some kind of neurological ailment, your baseline might be lower. You might be upset more often, and it might take less to bring you up, or even it might take you more because it's so low to get to a state of happiness that is normative for most people, right? I'm very, very concerned with that stuff. I guard with my heart because for a lot of my life, I've actually lived with a very low baseline where my general mood and tone and self would be in a depressive state, would be in a state of just lack of motivation, lack of stimulation. No matter how much I pumped into myself, it was hard to really move and act, right? And recently, through a lot of, self-searching, soul-searching, a lot of holding myself accountable, and a lot of training, really, I've found myself in a baseline just below normative. So, that sounds silly, but that is a great achievement of mine, right? I've gone from not being able to move and get out of bed every day to kind of getting out of bed most days and doing the bare minimum of what I expect of myself and then going back to bed, which I don't want to disparage, because if you are like me in this state, if your win in a day is to get out of bed, to brush your teeth, and to make yourself a small meal, that is a win. You should be incredibly proud of yourself. I think we don't celebrate ourselves enough, and I think I've talked about this several times on the channel already. We don't celebrate ourselves enough for just hitting goals, just reaching the bare minimum, because sometimes it's very hard for some of us. That being said, I've had an aversive relationship with stimulants in the past. I actually haven't been on any medication to regulate my mood, and I think I might benefit from it. Instead, I've primarily undergone therapeutic sort of mental reframeworks, those kinds of venues and vehicles towards mental betterment, which is basically, in very short form, just lots and lots of copium. And actually it works, honestly. I don't know why it's such a pejorative, copium, when, goodness, it really helps. And rarely do I put myself on anything aside of that. Occasionally I will indulge. But those, if anything, like alcohol or funny candy, right? It doesn't so much as bring my sort of state of being up as, it brings the perceived heights down a little bit. With a lack of hyper self-consciousness with those substances, I'm able to enjoy more instead of having to get more to enjoy, so to speak, right? The funny little meme compilation gives you a little snort or a little I hope that caught. When you laugh but not really. The meme compilations that do that, when you're very, very sippy, or when your head is in the clouds, elicits this deep, fun belly laugh, and it can be a good little respite. It's not something I try to do all the time. I try to keep off reliance, right? I think that's what the through line is trying to be. I try to keep off of being reliant on anything to maintain a sense of baseline normalcy, right? And I worry about my relationship with coffee because very recently in the mornings, I've been getting more and more scatterbrained. And I've been falling into a couple of other bad habits, but one of them that's coming to mind is that I'm drinking more coffee recently, which means I'm entering these increased states of hyper-performance, of expecting more utility out of myself than I usually do, right? Because coffee's great. Coffee's fantastic. Let me take a sip of my coffee. Coffee's great. It allows you to perform a lot. When you don't have coffee, your body needs to recover. Your body, with withdrawals to coffee, sort of eases up. and you need to have a couple of sort of no content days, no brain days, and I expect too much of myself every day to offer myself that. Maybe this is a conversation less about my use of coffee and more about what I expect of myself and what you expect of yourself at any given day, and maybe we expect too much. I want to do a lot, so I expect a lot, you know? It's this internal dialogue with myself, whether or not, how much I'm willing to push myself to get to where I want, right? I think we all have that dialogue with, am I doing enough for myself? Or am I giving myself enough of a break? It's a complex conversation. One that is sort of implicitly held in your mind at all times. But if I knew for a fact that I wouldn't start using coffee every day to hit these performance markers, these milestones every day, if I knew I wouldn't do that, I'd be less judicious with my use of coffee. But as it stands, my great worry is that I will drink so much coffee so consistently that when I do not, I will go from the baseline expectation of my functioning, and that's not just editing videos, that's not just recording properly, that's not just streaming, but also just mood, right? I posted on Twitter a long time ago, and by long, I mean digital long, which means like maybe no less than a month ago. I posted, it's crazy how energy makes you a different person, right? And how I feel like a fundamentally different person when I have energy, a la coffee, versus not having energy. I don't want to get too comfortable on high energy, at least high energy with the assistance of coffee, without raising my general floor. Because what happens when I start writing checks with my body that I cannot keep up with, right? That I cannot pay out. So yes, that's it. That's my current anxiety, I suppose, of whether or not my coffee use is accessible to me, which, I mean, is as far as problems go, it's not the deepest. It's not earth-shattering, right? It's in the grand scheme of things, a small problem, but ultimately, I am my own world, right? The way I experience the world is entirely through my own body, through my own perception. Some people live in fundamentally worse worlds because of the way they perceive the world, because of the way that their brain chemistry works. So, safeguarding your brain, being very, very precious with it, is actually incredibly important, because that dictates the way your life works. So, not to end the conversation on a pointless note, but that's the fight I'm going to be fighting for the next week or so, to maybe 2 weeks. Should I be just capping my caffeine, my coffee, and trying to enter a sort of holistic betterment with myself? Or is my suspicion with coffee not really that bad? Maybe it's not that deep. Maybe it's not that deep, bro, right? I don't know. I say that we should trust ourselves more, but I think I also fundamentally, ding ding ding, 10 minutes. I think I fundamentally have less trust in my body than most people do, or maybe than I had imagined most people do. So it makes me very, very careful.